Last week we released a video that's caused a flood of comments and questions. That video was called, "Do I have to be a charismatic visionary to be a good leader or even perhaps a great leader?" And of course the answer was no. You don't have to be charismatic and you don't have to be visionary, with a slight qualification. Now naturally the question we've received many times this week is then, what do I have to be in order to be a good leader? My name is Simon Tyson. I'm the CEO of The Real Learning Experience. In this short video, I plan to answer that question. Now before we talk about what you need to be a good or even great leader, I think we need to go back a step and ask, what do you need to do to be a good leader? And the answer to that question is inspired by a leading model of leadership created by John Adair, who talked about action-centered leadership. In the model of action-centered leadership, Professor Adair talked about the need for leaders to balance three things: doing the task, getting the job done; developing the team, so bringing a diverse group of people together into one cohesive unit; and growing the individuals, taking each person and making sure they're engaged, motivated, etc. When we talk about that in our workshops, we use the analogy of juggling. For a leader to be successful, they have to simultaneously keep three balls in the air at any given time. Now, of course, in our workshops, we actually demonstrate that by juggling. That won't translate on video, so you'll just have to trust me that I can in fact juggle. Now, one of the biggest problems for many leaders is they've been promoted based on task. When an organisation looks around and says, who should we promote into that more senior position, often they overlook skills in building teams, in growing individuals, and they look at their star performers. They make the dangerous assumption that someone who's good at doing the task is good at leading the task, and that doesn't always translate. Of course, that's not the fault of the manager going into that job. In reality, they could in fact be a very good leader. What they desperately need is some input, some coaching, some mentoring on the skills they don't bring from their previous role. For those of you who like things a bit more visual, please look at the transcript of this video, which is included in the same blog. In that transcript, we've included some diagrams that show exactly the models we're talking about. Let's return to the original question. What do I have to be a great leader if it's not charismatic and if it's not visionary? As I mentioned, I believe that the answer to that question really depends upon what you have to do. In my view, there are three things a good leader has to be, and they're based on that model of action-centered leadership. I know it's not traditional to start with the second thing, but that's where I'm going to start today, and you'll see why when we work through the process. So the second thing a really good leader needs to be is they need to be a coach. One of the key responsibilities, according to action-centered leadership, is to develop individuals. A leader who's a coach is capable of developing their people to a very high standard. The second thing a leader needs to be, and again this ties with that model of action-centered leadership, is they need to be a facilitator. A leader who's a good facilitator is really good at bringing those people together, really good at bringing diverse perspectives, diverse skills, backgrounds, etc. into one cohesive team working towards a common goal. Many of you watching this will now be thinking, oh, the third one, or in fact the first one, must relate to task. It doesn't. We make the assumption that when you come to the role, that you've pretty much got the task under control. That's the management side of the job, and that's going to be developed internally much more successfully. The third thing a leader needs to be is more global, it's more overriding, and it's to be a really strong model. A leader who's a really strong model sets a high benchmark and a high standard through their own personal example. So let's recap there. Action-centred leadership suggests that leaders need to juggle three balls. They need to be good at the task, they need to be good at developing individuals, and they need to be good at building teams. My view is in order to achieve that, a leader needs to be three things. They need to be leader as model, they need to be leader as coach, and they need to be leader as facilitator. These three things are so important that over the next 3 weeks, we're going to release a video on each of those topics. Each video will focus on one of those key roles that a leader needs to be. As always, I hope this video adds value to your working life. If it does, make sure you subscribe so you never miss each release. And perhaps share the video, share the link with your colleagues who might also get some value. Remember, next week we're going to drill down into much more specific information about what leader as a model actually means. What it means that you as a leader need to do day in, day out to achieve success on that dimension.